How do you feel after that greasy Flyers win? That's the way Alain Vigneault put it. Kevin Durso joins us now with his takeaways from the win and what should we look forward to in Game 4 at Kevin_Durso as he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. All right, Durso, power play dreadful last night, but they get out of there in spite of the fact that they cannot score with the man advantage. I'm imagining that was a topic of conversation today. So let's start there because they got to figure out what's going on with that.
Yeah, it's the biggest area of concern right now. They scored on the first power play of the series in Game 1 and then let two other opportunities get away from them in that game. In Game 2, even with the final score being 5-0, they were 0 for 5 on the power play. They had a lengthy 5-on-3 that could have changed that game while they were still down 3-0. Sunday's game, another 0 for 6 night, including a 4-minute power play early in the game that they let get away as well. There's a method to some of the madness here from this. This is, in part, Montreal doing a really good job on the penalty kill. Their strategy is pretty easy to see at this point. They have one forward who puts the pressure in the offensive zone on the forecheck. They have another who kind of lingers at the neutral zone, and these two are the ones that apply all the pressure. The defensemen stand up at the blue line, take that space away. There's limited options, and the Flyers have resorted to dump and chase an awful lot in this series. And I heard you guys talking about it just a few minutes ago. It's the perfect scenario for the Canadiens because they don't care if Carey Price comes out of the net and then plays the puck. He's essentially a third defenseman out there. He moves the puck to the next guy, and they cycle it out of the zone, and it's another clear, and there's no way for the Flyers to get set up. It's a good way to prevent the Flyers from doing much of anything on a power play. I mean, this is how they shut it down so far. And in games where you're going to get 5 or 6 power plays, you've got to find a way to take advantage. And you can't do it with the way that they've been doing it so far. I think that's the biggest area of adjustment that's needed. You can't try cross-ice passes. You can't get those one-timers you're looking for. You haven't been able to cycle the puck, get the perfect backdoor slam dunk play on the side of the net. It's just, they've been able to do that against other teams. They haven't against this team, and you've got to make the adjustments. I don't know if it'll be personnel adjustments. I think you're going to still see the best players they have on the ice, but you're going to have to change something in terms of the way that they move around, the way that they cycle the puck, the way that they try to funnel it to the net in some way, because you've got to start doing something other than what's been going on. There was one or two things I saw on the very first power play of the game last night. Travis Konechny had some open space and takes a shot that hits the crossbar, and Jake Voracek got some open space and tried to jam play at the side of the net. Those are things that can be effective when you have the space to do them, but you've got to try to work on some other stuff because you're letting too many power plays get away from you.
Something I noticed was you see how the first goal went in. Claude Giroux, after an offensive zone draw, takes a shot from the boards. It hits off Jake Voracek, and it goes in. So you would think that you already saw taking shots from anywhere and getting to the blue paint work. So when it comes to this power play, don't you think simplifying should be the answer? You mentioned the cross-ice passing, which got picked off a couple times, and going down below the goal line and trying to go hard to the blue paint from that angle hasn't worked. What about getting it to Ivan Provorov, or even maybe throwing someone like Travis Sanheim out up top and throwing pucks on net and getting in front of the blue paint? You saw that actually work in Game 1 when Ivan Provorov took that one-timer on the top.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if we're talking power play or 5-on-5. To beat Carey Price, you need traffic to the net and you need shot volume. And, the first goal, the only goal of the game last night, that's what you had. You had traffic at the net with the goal for Jake Voracek, and what you're not seeing is the shot volume here. The Flyers played Montreal 3 times in the regular season, and 2 times they faced Carey Price. In the 2 games against Carey Price, they took 43 shots in the first game and 41 in the second game. And look, Carey Price is not unbeatable on shots without traffic. If you shoot from all angles and if you pepper him with shots, then there's a chance that one of them will leak through at some point. Sean Couturier scored an overtime goal against him in November doing just that. It was a shot that just leaked under his arm. It's the 43rd shot of the game that they take, and if you have the shot volume, you've got a shot of having one make its way through. But if you don't, it's an uphill climb against this team because they just work really hard. They play good defense. They attack on the forecheck. They pressure you into making bad decisions with the puck. And a lot of what they're doing on the penalty kill is what they also are doing at 5-on-5.
Kevin Durso on the Flyers. Obviously Carter Hart was outstanding. But I guess the question will be for the Flyers to make a deep run. They can't keep winning games in this method, right? You can't keep relying on him every night, or can they? Is he that good that they have the hot goalie?
And he's that good that they can lean on him in games. I don't know how often you want to do that, but they can lean on him for sure. And I think that, it says a lot for him to bounce back the way that he did again. I don't know. It shouldn't be surprising anymore. I thought Jake Voracek had a great quote after the game where he said that he's kind of oblivious to being a goalie in Philadelphia, and that seems to work to his advantage because for years and years, for decades and decades, this has been the missing piece to competitive Flyers teams. It's been they might have some good scoring forward, they might have a few good defensemen, they might have all those other pieces in place, but they never had the goalie that could lead them and carry them through the playoffs. Now it seems to be that they have a goalie who has the ability to. He's shown flashes of it. And I think that what was interesting about this game, too, and part of the takeaways I had in this also was, he's had moments where you see the comparisons to Carey Price just come out in full force. He has that same calm, cool, collected demeanor in the crease. He doesn't get rattled easily. He bounces back from the rough starts. He's posted numbers in these playoffs so far that are outstanding, that the only goalie who can even compete with these numbers that Carter Hart's put up is Carey Price. And it's pretty interesting to see how that they level off in that similar fashion right now. That Carter Hart has been as good as advertised, if not better, in 2 of the 3 games. And I said with Josh after game 2, I don't even think that game 2 was really all his fault. He got left out to dry in that game. And you saw what happened when he had better play in front of him, had more support. The block shots were a huge part of this game yesterday. And that helps him to be even more on his game because he gets the support. So this is what you get. You get performances like this, and he's got the ability to, especially in a game like that, 1-0, you're holding on to that one goal for the entire way almost. He locked it down the entire time, and every time it seemed like there was a moment where, we talked about Scott Lawton's turnovers or that play at the very end of the game there where the puck, Ivan Provor's trying to clear the puck and it hits off of a shin pad and then leads to a mini 2-on-1 or 2-on-0 in front of the net. He makes that save too, and it's moments like that where he's not out of position in any way. He's usually always lined up the right way, but you still get nervous about it because of the fact that in years past, that's the one that goes in the net with the Flyers. And in these cases, it hasn't, and you've got a guy who's able to just look pressure in the face and shake it off like it's nothing.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you because Friday they played at 3, and that game we didn't really get to react to here on the radio, but, you lose 5-0, he gets pulled. You just kind of hinted at it, but was the 5-0 and him getting pulled indicative of his play?
For him, I'm sure it was, because I think that somehow or other he still takes it personally in one way or another. I mean, they had on the broadcast during game 2, he skates off the ice after that 4th goal. He's getting pulled, and he goes to head up the tunnel to the locker room and slams the door behind him because he just, obviously it was frustration for everybody, but he shoulders a lot of it, even when it's not necessarily his fault. You knew he was going to bounce back, and it was just a matter of whether the team in front of him had the same kind of effort, and I thought that they did in terms of at least protecting him. They kept a lot of things to the outside for Montreal. There wasn't a ton of those high-danger chances like there was in Game 2, and when there was, he took care of it. So I think that he definitely shoulders some of that, even if it's not all his fault. He wants to be the best he can be, and that's the determination he has.
AV made some lineup changes. Joel Farabee out, Raffle in, Ghost out, Hagen. Obviously, he went for more of a physical approach. Do you think that AV stays with this type of method for the next game, or do you think Farabee can find his way back in the lineup with his speed?
If there's going to be any change, I think Farabee would be the one who comes back in. I'm not really sure who would come out at this point. I mean, James Van Riemsdyk had the lowest ice time of any forward last night, which was surprising. At one point, obviously at some point in time, AV just stopped putting him out there. And then there's other guys that you could see it being too. I mean, I would like to believe that the most obvious choice to pull out of the lineup would probably be Nate Thompson in that situation. But Nate Thompson got a lot of significant minutes toward the end of that game and did his job for the most part. You got to give him credit. He did what he had to do, and he fits his role really well. So maybe that's where you try to make the adjustment, is that if James Van Riemsdyk is sitting on the bench and playing limited minutes, you get him out of the lineup and you put Joel Farabee in because Farabee is at least going to give you energy, and he's going to give you maybe more of a scoring touch than, he's got one of the 3 goals in this series. Let's be honest about it. There's only 3 goals in the series so far for the Flyers, and he's got one of them, and he didn't play in one of the games. So, maybe to try to spark something a little bit, he's been that kind of spark plug for them at times, and I think that maybe that's where you go with it. I don't see him doing any changes on the defensive side. I think that Robert Haig's presence brought that physical edge that was needed. I hinted at the fact that I think that they should have tried to go that direction in Game 2 because it was lacking in Game 1, and they didn't. And I think that after getting blown out in Game 2, they knew they had to make a change like that just to keep up with what Montreal was bringing to them, which was a physical side, the speed, the need to have two guys on that pairing who stay at home and know their role really well. And I think you got much more of what you expect from the Flyers on the defensive side in that game because of it.
It's interesting you bring up JVR, and I know we touched on this pretty recently, but him playing on the fourth line, it just doesn't make much sense to me. It seems like AV obviously is not a big fan of his game right now, but don't you think with a team that needs some more scoring, that maybe moving him up in the lineup and maybe playing on that third line could benefit him more than playing on the fourth? It's hard for me to think that under 10 minutes and playing the least amount of time as a forward is right for JVR. I don't think he's that bad of a player where he shouldn't be playing more, or, he's playing less than 10 minutes. It's just absurd to me to see where he is right now on this team.
Well, it's funny you say that, Bros, because, he started the game on the third line, and this is one of those players who AV has talked extensively about when it comes to needing to see more out of him. And I think very clearly at some point during the game, then, something changed and he got bumped down and his ice time was significantly diminished. And as a result of that, he starts to get fourth line time, and you see him play in that kind of amount of ice time. And I think that's why he becomes a candidate to come out of the lineup, because I think, I think that Michael Raffl is a good fit on the fourth line, and you saw him get up to the third line and for a moment the second line, because, AV's made that threat before. If guys aren't playing to their full capability or not contributing in the way that he expects or bringing the right energy or whatever, he's going to move them around, and they might lose ice time as a result of it. So I think that it's very clearly a message that's being sent regarding that this is the forward who is seeing the least amount of ice time. And I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, it didn't surprise me as much. I think on the surface I was surprised that Farabee was out for this game, but I think in hindsight it's not as much of a surprise given his size disadvantage. I mean, he's been hit pretty hard by Shea Weber a couple times in this series, and you can see the size differential there for sure. But I think at some point in time, if you're going to limit him to maybe 10 minutes a night anyway, there's no reason not to put Farabee in the lineup and to hold a guy like JVR out of the lineup if you can get some scoring touch out of him and get a little bit more energy, because I don't think that Van Riemsdyk is bringing right now the way that AV wants to see. So that's something to watch out for Game 4.
All right, we'll leave you with this. Any thought on the back-to-back if we see Carter Hart in both games, regardless of what happens? If they're up 3-1, do we see Brian Elliott? If it's 2-2, do we see Hart? Has there any indication of what he will do with a back-to-back playoff game Tuesday and Wednesday?
Well, there's no indication, but I have several different theories on this. And first of all, I think Carter Hart's your starter for Game 4. No question about it. I don't see how you go with anybody else after his performance in Game 3. I think you have to go there, and I think you want to go with him anyway because of the fact that this is an opportunity to take a commanding lead in the series, to take the 3-1 lead, and set yourself up to win the series. So I think you have to put your best goaltender out there for Game 4, no question about it. But this is where it starts to get interesting. I think that if you had a game in front of you in Game 4 that you win in similar fashion to Game 3, and the shot volume on Carter Hart is not that high, and he has a relatively calm game for all things considered, I don't think you hesitate to throw him back out there for Game 5 and try to go for the series win right there. He hasn't played in the back-to-back at all this year. He did one time in his rookie year, and I had to go back and check to just see if there was any indication of why that may have worked out. And one of the things was it was a 1 o'clock Saturday game and a 6 o'clock Sunday game. And that's kind of that same time frame here, this 3 o'clock on Tuesday and 8 o'clock on Wednesday. So there's enough of a gap that maybe he feels comfortable with it. And, I think the way that Carter Hart's playing can have an effect on Montreal in this series too, because Montreal didn't play a bad game in Game 3 and they lose 1-0. It can be deflating if you play competitively for 2, 3 games, 4 games in a series if it's similar in Game 4, and you lose 2 or 3 times out of that. If the Canadians play another 1-0, 2-1 game and don't win in Game 4, and now they're facing elimination, it's going to be extremely deflating for that team, and you might be able to start to wear on their will a little bit. So I think you need to keep putting Carter Hart out there as long as the circumstances allow. I think the only way you see Brian Elliott in Game 5 is if Carter Hart has to stand on his head in Game 4 and has to make something like 33, 35 saves, something crazy like that, to really require the rest factor. Otherwise, I think you just keep rolling with Carter Hart because Montreal's going to sit there at the other end, and even though the game's changed so much in years when it comes to playing goalies, they're going to sit there and ride Carey Price as far as he's going to take them. I think you might have to do that with Carter Hart in the series, given how low scoring it is, given how key every save is. And I think that that's what you'll see from the Flyers quite possibly if it's not an extremely difficult game for Carter Hart in Game 4.
He's Kevin Durso, and, of course, you can follow all his Flyers coverage on our website, 973ESPN.com. Follow him on Twitter at Kevin_Durso, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thank you, pal.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.